Chapter 714. In 5 years at most, the entire Tiannan would belong to Zhongzhou state. Since the emergence of Tiannan in Southeast Asia, no one had ever said something like that. There was no doubt that this was the most powerful promise and the one that Zhongzhou state most wanted to hear. Li Tianlan's voice was very calm. He didn't pretend to be excited, but everyone could hear his lofty sentiments and lofty aspirations in his words. It was almost absolute confidence. No one dared to ignore this. And now Li Tianlan himself was no longer a figure that could be ignored. Marshal Li, are you really confident? Just as Li Tianlan's voice fell, when everyone was still thinking, Prime Minister Chen Fangqing of Zhongzhou state had already sat up straight, looked at Li Tianlan, and asked seriously. His eyes were very solemn, with a touch of undisguised expectation. Li Tianlan glanced at him and felt a little emotional. He had heard of Chen Fangqing's character, but he did not expect that the other party's response would be so straightforward. The 9 directors of Zhongzhou state's parliament could be said to be the 9 pillars of Zhongzhou state today, and each of them deserved respect. But in detail, Chen Fangqing could be said to be the most simple person. The position of prime minister could be said to be well-deserved. Wan Qingyun, who was in charge of the supervision of Zhongzhou state, and Ji Wenzhang, who was in charge of the party affairs of Zhongzhou state, were the 2 directors of the Southeast Group. Because the Wang family of Beihai was too powerful, although these 2 were the leaders of the Southeast Group, they often had to consider the interests of Beihai province and the will of the Wang family of Beihai. President Li Huaqing and Hua Jingyang, who met for the first time in Zhongzhou state, were also under great pressure. As the leaders of the academics, the 2 could even be said to be the most stressed of the 9 directors. Compared with the deep-rooted Prince Group and the Southeast Group, the academics was just a group that rose in recent decades. It was a typical representative of grassroots origin with a serious lack of foundation. In the beginning, it could be said that it was completely supported by Li Huaqing's charm. 7 years as president, 5 years as a director, and 3 years as a member of parliament. All in all, Li Huaqing had been in the central system of Zhongzhou state for less than 20 years, which was also the fastest development of the academics. Now Li Huaqing was approaching the age of retirement, but the scale of the academics was still slightly inferior to that of the Prince Group. Li Huaqing needed to consider the overall situation of Zhongzhou state, but he also needed to consider the survival of the academics after his retirement, so sometimes it was inevitable that he would be in a dilemma. Department head Zhou Yunhai, who represented the Northern Bloc, could be said to be extremely neutral. The Northern Bloc was the weakest, so Zhou Yunhai kept an extremely low profile. He only quietly guarded his own bloc and went with the flow. The giant group could be said to be the largest of the 6 groups, but the largest did not have the strongest cohesion, so that the giant group had always been extremely bloated. In the past few years, it was Zhou Mulin who had been supporting the overall situation. Although Dongqing Wudi had been a counselor for many years, he had only been a director for a short time. At present, he was in the process of controlling the army headquarters by force, so he did not make much noise about things outside the army headquarters for the time being. Chairman Guo Wenian of the Prince Group could be said to be the real leader of the Prince Group. Although his ranking was behind Chen Fangqing, he coordinated most of the internal affairs of the group. And Prime Minister Chen Fangqing. There was no doubt that he came from the Prince Group, but most of the time, his style of doing things did not have too many traces of the group. Chen Fangqing was majestic and extremely fair. During his 7 years as prime minister, he rarely got angry with harsh words. But every time the prime minister got angry, it was enough to shock the whole Zhongzhou state. In 7 years, the prime minister had personally killed 6 senior officials at the governor-general level, and 2 of them were actually from the Prince Group. This kind of justice often made people subconsciously ignore his position. In the case that the Prince Group had Guo Wenian, most of the time his eyes fell on the overall situation of Zhongzhou state, and what he protected was the interests of the whole Zhongzhou state. No matter how much Li Tianlan disliked the Prince Group, he could not hate Chen Fangqing. He nodded and said seriously, "I can guarantee it." "Where does Marshal Li's confidence come from?" Guo Wenian said with a smile, without any anger in his tone. "I think the hidden ones who appeared on the battlefield can explain part of the problem," Li Tianlan said calmly. In the following time, I will take over part of the power of the Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, which can also explain part of the problem. And I have reached an agreement with the Wang family of Beihai. The Wang family of Beihai feels obliged to contribute to the consolidation of the border forces of Zhongzhou State. Mrs. Wang personally promised to support part of the armaments and some economic support of Emperor Dong's palace. In addition, the Wang family of Beihai will build a military airport and a gene potion laboratory in Tiannan in the near future, and these will become part of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan continued. His voice was still very soft, but every word he said was like a clap of thunder, causing everyone's ears to buzz. The appearance of the Hidden Ones could indeed explain a lot of problems. But Li Tianlan was about to take over the Samsara Palace and a part of the Purgatory, which no one was sure about at the moment. In fact, no one could guarantee how much power the Samsara Palace had left with the fall of the Master of Samsara Palace, and whether it would accept Li Tianlan's leadership. However, the high-profile saint and knight who joined the Samsara Palace, and today's Hidden Ones, could already explain Li Tianlan's leadership in the Samsara Palace. The Purgatory of Heaven Capital, a superpower that had just risen in recent years, could be said to be the product of the Li family's nirvana rebirth. Now Li Honghe died, Li Guangtu was seriously injured, and another invincible realm expert, Daybreak, was not even sure whether he was alive or dead. At this time, it would not be difficult for Li Tianlan to attack the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. There was no doubt that he could take over a part of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. The question was, how big was the so-called part? And the Wang family of Beihai. Armament support, economic support, the establishment of a military airport, and even the core gene potion laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai would be set up in Tiannan and belong to Li Tianlan. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenjiang's faces instantly became extremely ugly. There was no doubt that this was the harvest of Li Tianlan's trip to Beihai. This trip not only made the Wang family of Beihai lose an invincible realm expert, but also pressed the neck of the Wang family of Beihai to make summer solstice lower her head. The harvest that Li Tianlan said was destined to be a part of it. They didn't dare to think or even ask what the Wang family of Beihai had to pay secretly. The most important thing is, Li Tianlan's voice continued, within 5 years, I will definitely enter the invincible realm. At that time, I will be in Tiannan and accept the challenge of all the invincible realm experts in the dark world. Everyone's face changed slightly. 5 years later, Li Tianlan would only be 27 years old. A 27-year-old invincible realm expert, and not an ordinary invincible realm expert. Now, Li Tianlan could crush the invincible realm experts on the holy list without breaking through. Once he broke through the current realm, he might not need to stabilize his realm at all, and he could have the combat capability no less than the peak of the invincible realm. Such a Emperor Dong's palace. At this moment, even Hua Jingyang, the leader of the academics, flashed a trace of fear in his eyes, not to mention Guo Wenin, Ji Wenjiang, and others. And Gu Xingyun, His Highness Gu Xingyun, who had been threatened by Li Tianlan with force in the meeting and had lost all his face, looked pale at this time. Everyone, I'm saying this to tell the parliament that the future of Emperor Dong's palace is worth looking forward to. Today's Emperor Dong's palace is very young, but it doesn't mean that we are weak. Specifically, in Tiannan, we have invincible realm experts, invincible realm combat capability, rich talent echelons, strong economic strength, advanced weapons and equipment. Emperor Dong's palace has everything it should have. We already have all the basic conditions to control Tiannan. The only thing we need is time. Li Tianlan's voice paused, and then he continued, maybe there is support from all of you. What does Marshal Li want? It was Chen Fangqing again. The Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State didn't seem to see Gu Xingyun's pale face and Guo Wentian's dissatisfied eyes at all. He asked straightforwardly, Prime Minister, you don't have to be so polite. I can't afford to be called Marshal Li. In the future, my energy must be focused on Tiannan. My energy is limited, and I can't deal with too many things of Zhongzhou State's military and special warfare system for the time being. So I'm here to make a request. I request to resign from the position of Marshal of Zhongzhou State's Special Warfare System and Commander of the Snowdance Corps. Li Tianlan shook his head and said in a flat tone. Chen Fangqing was stunned. Everyone was stunned. No one expected that Li Tianlan would resign at this time. He not only gave up the leadership of the Snowdance Corps, but also the position of marshal. Although marshal was only a military rank, in Tiannan, it was a higher military rank than the commander of the Freedom Corps. This also meant that even if Li Tianlan didn't hold any position, he could use the name of marshal to control the Freedom Corps at critical moments. But thinking of the relationship between Li Tianlan and Ning Xiun, it really didn't matter whether he wanted the rank of marshal or not. Chen Fangqing thought for a while, turned to look at Gu Xingyun and asked, Your Highness Gu Xingyun, what do you think of this matter? Gu Xingyun opened his mouth. The almost invisible sword intent completely enveloped his body in an instant. Li Tianlan's eyes swept over with a faint smile. Gu Xingyun gritted his teeth. After a long time, he said word by word, I agree with Comrade Li Tianlan's resignation. You can resign. Li Huaqing said slowly, but Tianlan, according to the current performance of Emperor Dong's palace, it should be difficult for Zhongzhou state to give you enough support in a short time. What do you want? Order. Li Tianlan said calmly, an order that can really guarantee the smooth operation of Emperor Dong's palace. I want the parliament to agree to the establishment of Xianyuan City in Emperor Dong's palace and give necessary support. In addition, I want to recommend a rare talent to the parliament. He glanced at Ning Ziyuan, who was silent, and said slowly, I hope Ning Qianxing can be the first mayor of Xianyuan City. He glanced at Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun's eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Li Huaqing raised his eyebrows slightly and didn't speak for a while. I agree. Dongqing Wudi said slowly, I know Ning Qianxing. He is capable of being the mayor. Li Tianlan smiled and was about to speak when a steady voice suddenly sounded, I disagree. Chen Fangqing. It was still Chen Fangqing. Because of an emergency, this chapter doesn't have 8,000 words. I want it to last at least a week. Chapter 7:15. There was a flash of doubt in Li Tianlan's eyes. He glanced at Chen Fangqing. Chen Fangqing was also looking at him, smiling, and his eyes were full of calmness. Li Tianlan seemed to understand. He smiled and said nothing. I agree to establish Xianyuan City in Tiannan. Chen Fangqing's voice was soft. But Ning Qianxing, minister, has he been in the Border Control Corps before? Dongqing Wudi lowered his eyelids and said lightly, he was indeed in the Border Control Corps a few years ago. He is a very calm young man. He has been in the Sky Academy these years, and now he must be more mature than before. Chen Fangqing didn't seem to understand Dongqing Wudi's meaning at all. He just chuckled and said, in that case, Ning Qianxing has always been a soldier. The situation in Tiannan is very complicated now, and the identity of Emperor Dong's palace is very sensitive. As the mayor, he has to coordinate all aspects. This is a very difficult test for Ning Qianxing. After all, he is still too young. I think we should send a more mature and steady mayor to Tiannan to handle things in Tiannan while ensuring the interests of Emperor Dong's palace and prepare for 5 years later. 5 years later. That was the time when Li Tianlan promised that Tiannan would completely belong to Zhongzhou state. Ning Ziyuan looked at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan shook his head imperceptibly and said calmly, Prime Minister, who is more suitable to be the mayor of Tiannan? Chen Fangqing agreed to establish Xianyuan City for the sake of the overall situation of Zhongzhou state, but it didn't mean that the Prime Minister really appreciated Li Tianlan. The establishment of Xianyuan City could be said to be the biggest move that Zhongzhou state had made in Tiannan in more than 3 years. After all, Tiannan was not Zhongzhou state. It was a newly established system without a speaker, and the mayor was the real leader. But the whole Tiannan was the foundation of the province. Once the first mayor and the first governor returned, they were destined to enter the Zhongzhou state parliament. And with Li Tianlan's full support, the MP who entered the parliament had at least an 80% chance of becoming a director of the parliament. In such a way, Tiannan already had the foundation of a large group. Once Ning Qianxing entered the parliament, he didn't even need to become a director. He could promote talents from Tiannan to various departments of Zhongzhou state on a large scale. This process might be long, but it was destined to be vigorous. And as Li Tianlan became more and more powerful, no one could stop the rise of the new group. Chen Fangqing wanted to see Tianan become a part of Zhongzhou state, but he didn't want to see a new group in Zhongzhou state. In particular, this group was headed by Li Tianlan. Ning Qiansheng could not. He would even oppose anyone who approached Li Tianlan. And from the bottom of his heart, Chen Fangqing was telling the truth. In his opinion, Ning Qiansheng was indeed too young to handle the complicated situation in Tianan. Sending a mature and steady mayor over was also responsible for the cause of Zhongzhou state. All kinds of thoughts kept flashing in Chen Fangqing's mind. Xianyuan City was undoubtedly the key to Tianan. If Tianan really became a province of Zhongzhou state in the future, Xianyuan City was destined to be the provincial capital of Tianan. Looking at the whole Zhongzhou state, the leaders of provincial capital cities were all senior officials at the level of provincial councillors and deputy governors. Besides, they were often the first candidates for the position of the provincial government. He was the first mayor of Xianyuan City. In such a sensitive period, his rank was naturally no exception. Deputy governor rank. In the eyes of the giants at the top, this level was not an indispensable figure, but at least they would not be ignored. Among so many senior officials at the level of deputy governor in Zhongzhou state, it was very easy to find a few people with top-notch abilities. Not only the deputy governor rank, but also the second-level successors that the major groups worked hard to cultivate should also consider the possibility of promotion. The position of mayor of Tianan could be said to be the most valuable position at the level of deputy governor in Zhongzhou state. Because as long as one held this position and gained a firm foothold in Tianan, it was equivalent to holding a ticket directly to the Zhongzhou state parliament. The price to pay for this ticket was also very high. If the person holding this position was not one of Li Tianlan's people, it meant offending Li Tianlan. But compared with the identity of a councillor and offending Li Tianlan, the former was undoubtedly much more important. And even if he was not one of Li Tianlan's people, he could still cooperate with Li Tianlan in his work in Tianan. Chen Fangqing straightened out the relationship in the shortest time possible. In such a sensitive position, it was necessary to have top abilities in all aspects, but also enough to not be afraid of Li Tianlan, or even Li Tianlan's background in the future. Only in this way could he keep Li Tianlan in check in Tianan. In this way, there would be a lot less such candidates. Chen Fangqing immediately recalled the people in the prince group who met this condition. Just when he had already identified the candidates, he suddenly saw Li Tianlan's eyes. Li Tianlan was looking at him, his eyes gently fluctuating, and he seemed to be smiling. In an instant, Chen Fangqing's whole heart suddenly sank. The moment he met this gaze, he suddenly felt cold all over. Chen Fangqing hesitated for a moment. He had no time to think about it carefully, so he gave up this rare place instinctively. He turned his head and glanced at Wang Qingyun, the vice president of Zhongzhou state, and said with a smile, "When it comes to suitable candidates, the first one I think of is Comrade Wang Jingxin, the speaker of Lin. This comrade has a high theoretical level, strong practical working ability, and outstanding prestige in Lin. He has the overall situation and is good at dealing with complex situations. I think it is very suitable, even the most suitable, to let Wang Jingxin go to Tianan." He glanced at Li Tianlan out of the corner of his eye. Li Tianlan still had a faint smile on his face, but there was a touch of sarcasm in it. Chen Fangqing subconsciously clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and kept smiling. Everyone had a thoughtful look on their faces. Indeed, Wang Jingxin, the speaker of Lin, was really the most suitable candidate at present. Letting him go to Tianan could be regarded as an explanation to both the giant group and Li Tianlan. At least, not to mention Dongqing Wudi, at least the possibility of Zhou Mulan's opposition was very small. Wang Jingxin had enough ability and the top background. As the core of the next generation of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Tianzong was very optimistic about the next generation of the Wang family of Beihai. In the future, Wang Jingxin's status in the Wang family of Beihai would be like that of Zhongzhou State Councillor Wang Qinglei in the Wang family of Beihai. Such a background would not make him afraid of Li Tianlan. Moreover, his ability was not only to deal with the complex situation in Tianan, but also to play with Li Tianlan in Tianan. Everyone present was very confident about Wang Jingxin's means. Even if he could not take advantage of Li Tianlan, at least he would not suffer a loss. Moreover, moving Wang Jingxin out of Xianxia was tantamount to forcing the Wang family of Beihai to give up Lin. At the very least, it was tantamount to greatly relieving the pressure of Governor Zhou Yuanshan of Xianxia. More than 20 years ago, Xianxia was the base camp of the Li family. Over the years, Wu Jingmin had become more and more determined to defend Xianxia. But he was in the Southeast Group, and Xianxia had been infiltrated by the Southeast Group a lot. Among them, Wang Jingxin was the representative of the Wang family of Beihai in Xianxia. Some time ago, Wu Jingmin entered the cabinet and became the vice prime minister, the next leader of the giant group, and Dongqing Wudi's son-in-law, Zhou Yuanshan, was transferred to Xianxia as the governor. It seemed that he was going to take over. But Su Xinghe, the governor of Jiangnan, was transferred to Xianxia as the speaker, which could also be regarded as the counterattack of the Wang family of Beihai. Now Xianxia seemed to be calm, but the internal situation was turbulent. Zhou Yuanshan was suppressed by Su Xinghe, and Wang Jingxin was eyeing him covetously. He was under great pressure. At this time, if Wang Jingxin, who was as famous as Zhou Yuanshan, was transferred away, Su Xinghe would definitely not be able to resist Zhou Yuanshan. Xianxia would be separated from the sphere of influence of the Wang family of Beihai. But Xianxia, which belonged to the Li family, might fall back into the hands of the Li family with Zhou Yuanshan's ascension. But it was more likely to belong to the giant group. If Li Tianlan did not fight, he would feel sorry for Wu Jingmin and some old people who were loyal to the Li family. If he fought, he would destroy the relationship with the giant group. But at present, Li Tianlan was still close to the giant group. So, transferring Wang Jingxin to relieve Zhou Yuanshan's pressure was still an explanation to Li Tianlan. The twists and turns in the middle were too complicated. Only a sophisticated person like Chen Fangqing could lock on Wang Jingxin at the first time. If this move succeeded, it would be more than killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Almost all aspects were compressing Li Tianlan's future development space. This was indeed a good thing. But only for Chen Fangqing. No! Without the slightest hesitation, Vice President Wan Qingyun of Zhongzhou State directly refused Chen Fangqing's proposal, and his voice was cold and hard. Wang Jingxin. He was cultivated by the Southeast Group and the Wang family of Beihai as the next standard-bearer. A ticket to enter the parliament was very attractive to others, but for Wang Jingxin it was destined. His end was not only to enter the parliament of Zhongzhou State, or even to become a director. From the beginning, he and Zhou Yuanshan and a few others were staring at the position of president. Now he was playing with Zhou Yuanshan in Lin. Although he was not at ease, at least he was not at a disadvantage. To say the least, even if the Southeast Group really wanted to give up Xianxia, Wang Jingxin could go to Jianghuai, Jiangnan, or Wuyue, where the power of the Southeast Group was deeply rooted. Go to Tianan to play with Li Tianlan? Win? There was no benefit, and it would be worse if he lost. Why would Wang Jingxin jump into that pit of fire? Moreover, he refused Li Tianlan's face and wanted to send people to Tianan. Did he really think that Li Tianlan was a clay bodhisattva without anger? This person was a raging fire. Perhaps the only benefit of Wang Jingxin going to Tianan was that he could contain Li Tianlan's development to a certain extent, but the premise was that he had to stand firm under Li Tianlan's suppression. Even if he could achieve this goal, it was not what the Wang family of Beihai needed. Chen Fangqing's proposal was simply outrageous. Chen Fangqing narrowed his eyes slightly. At that moment, he exchanged a look with Li Huaqing again. The relationship between the Prince Group and the academics was not harmonious over the years. After all, Li Huaqing took over the position of president from the Prince Group. But in many cases, there was a rare tacit understanding between the president of Zhongzhou State and the prime minister of Zhongzhou State. It was no exaggeration to say that although Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing had different positions, they were the best president and prime minister in Zhongzhou State in the past 100 years. Chen Fangqing looked at Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing's eyes were clear and indifferent. He nodded calmly. Chen Fangqing laughed. The transfer of cadres has always been subject to the organization. I think Wang Jingxin is a very good candidate. If he goes to Tianan, it's a good thing. Comrade Qingyun, from the standpoint of Zhongzhou State, don't you think Wang Jingxin is very suitable? The current situation in Xianxia is also very critical. As for Lin, and we can't do without Comrade Wang Jingxin for the time being. If he goes to Tianan now, and will be a little difficult. Ji Wenxiang smiled and also expressed his opposition. Chen Fangqing smiled indifferently. He and Li Huaqing had reached a tacit understanding. At this time, he didn't want to waste his breath at all. He said calmly, if the council can't reach a consensus, I propose a vote. 9 council members. The minority followed the majority. As long as more than half of the 9 giants supported Wang Jingxin to go to Tianan, the appointment would be considered passed. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenxiang's faces suddenly changed, and their eyes became a little gloomy. There was no doubt that they saw determination from Chen Fangqing's look. The prince group was very strong, stronger than the academics and the giant group. But facing the southeast group alone, they had no advantage. At this time, Chen Fangqing confidently wanted to vote, which could only mean one thing. At that moment, they had reached a consensus with at least one of the academics or the giant group. Who was it? There was no need to think about it at all. The academics. It could only be the academics. Because compared with the giant group that fully supported Li Tianlan, the academics sometimes had a very subtle position. They were indeed dutiful allies, but only limited to allies. From the perspective of the academics, they preferred that Li Tianlan's peak position was supported by the academics and the giant group, not by Li Tianlan himself. Therefore, the academics certainly didn't want to see Li Tianlan establish his own group, but because they were allies, they couldn't oppose it. Wang Jingxin going to Tianan was undoubtedly a good move. As long as Wang Jingxin went there, he and Li Tianlan would be entangled. It was impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to give up Wang Jingxin, the future leader, and they were bound to give him support. In this way, the contradiction between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai would continue to escalate. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai would naturally suppress Li Tianlan in all aspects. But now, how could Li Tianlan, who had already grown up, have no power to resist? If the Wang family of Beihai wanted to suppress Li Tianlan, they had to show their real strength. A large part of their energy was tied up by Li Tianlan. At that time, it would be more convenient for Zhongzhou State to take action against the Wang family of Beihai. Weakening the Wang family of Beihai and the Southeast Group represented huge interests, which were related to the advancement and retreat of countless people, their future, their life and death, and their political lives. The giant group would definitely support Li Tianlan. In this way, the giant group and Li Tianlan, the Wang family of Beihai and Wang Jingxin. In the process of the game between the two sides, the giant group would definitely pay more attention to the academics' attitude, and the academics could also take advantage of this to get a lot of benefits. If there was no accident, Li Huaqing would retire after 3 years. He very much hoped to work for one more term, but if his plan failed before he retired, he must arrange a way out for the academics. The so-called way out, to put it bluntly, was to strengthen the strength of the academics and try to let more people of the academics take more positions. Because as he retired, the academics would inevitably encounter the joint oppression of several other groups. Even an ally like the giant group would not be polite at that time. If Li Huaqing did not arrange it well, the North group today might be the academics tomorrow. If Wang Jingxin was transferred to Tianan, such a big opportunity, the academics would definitely gain a lot. At that time, even if he retired, the academics would have enough bargaining chips to compromise in the face of the joint forces of several other groups. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenxiang looked at each other, and they immediately understood the position of the academics. Li Huaqing would certainly not let go of such a good opportunity. No matter how good their relationship with Li Tianlan was, the academics had to make plans for itself. Several eyes looked at Dongqing Wudi at the same time. Li Tianlan was looking at Dongqing Wudi. Ji Wenxiang and Wan Qingyun were also looking at Dongqing Wudi. If the prince group and the academics joined hands, there would be 4 members of the Li family. In the current situation, the Southeast group could only choose to join hands with the giant group, so that the four directors could barely stand. Chen Fangqing, Li Huaqing, Ji Wenjiang, Wan Qingyun, and even Li Tianlan could see the problem clearly, so could Dongqing Wudi. Ji Wenjiang and Wan Qingyun thought that Dongqing Wudi had no reason to refuse. As for Li Tianlan, he also wanted to see if the giant group was really willing to support him at all costs. The giant group, the Southeast group. The Prince group, the academics. They joined hands. In many cases, when it came to the overall situation in politics, the boundary between opponents and friends had always been very blurred. There were no eternal opponents, and there were no eternal friends. Joining hands and playing games, fighting and compromising, had always been because of interests, and only because of interests. Dongqing Wudi smiled faintly and said calmly, "Everyone, Tenan has not returned yet. Whether it is Emperor Dong's palace or Xianyuan City, they should be limited to the special warfare system, right? Your Highness Gu Xingyun, what do you think?" His voice was very calm, but as soon as he spoke, Chen Fangqing and Li Huaqing's eyes had narrowed at the same time. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenjiang breathed a sigh of relief. Obviously, Dongqing Wudi had accepted the signal to join hands to stop Wang Jingxin's mobilization. Zhou Mulin was silent for a while, nodded, and said clearly, "I agree with the minister. In this matter, it is obvious that Kunlun City has the most say." Gu Xingyun's eyes had become extremely distorted. He sat here on an equal footing with the directors, but he had no right to vote. These people discussed for a long time and completely regarded him as transparent. Now they remembered that this was a matter of the Special Warfare Group? Gu Xingyun only felt extremely aggrieved, and even his internal injury got worse. A few years ago, after the retirement of Qi Beizong, the executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State and the leader of the Special Warfare Group, the Special Warfare Group received enough compensation in other fields, but it lost the decision-making power at the highest level. This was the biggest weakness of the Special Warfare Group today. Gu Xingyun alone could not support this situation for the time being. But now that Dongqing Wudi had sent the opportunity to him, he could not give it up. How could he not know that this opportunity was actually a trap? But the problem was that he could not retreat. Because he was the god of war of Zhongzhou State, the leader of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, and Kunlun City was the special warfare center of Zhongzhou State. As for the problem of Tianan, Kunlun City had the most say before everything came to the table. It was impossible for him to agree with Li Tianlan's people as the mayor of Xianyuan City. If possible, he would not agree with the people of other groups as the mayor. In the final analysis, this was an internal matter of the special warfare area. Even for the sake of the face of Kunlun City, Gu Xingyun had to fight for the position of mayor. As for whether it was a trap or an opportunity, it depended on the ability of the new mayor. Gu Xingyun took a deep breath. He was clearly aware of the obvious smell of blood in his throat as he breathed. He clenched his fists tightly and said calmly, "Comrade Wang Jingxin is indeed a very good candidate, but I also have a candidate here for you to consider." He said lightly, "Qi Mulin, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Security, what do you think?" Qi Mulin once served as the mayor of Beijiang, the speaker, the deputy governor, and so on. 2 years ago, he was transferred to the Ministry of Security. He has the experience of governing a local government, working in the Ministry of Security, and dealing with people in the dark world. I think Qi Mulin is more suitable to be the mayor of Xianyuan City than Wang Jingxin. I agree. Without hesitation, Dongqing Wudi directly expressed his position. Agree. 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 Ji Wenjiang, Wan Qingyun, and Zhou Mulin spoke almost at the same time. Gu Xingyun had to fight for the position of mayor of Xianyuan City. If Gu Xingyun did not fight for the grievances between the Gu family and the Li family, it would cause considerable opinions in the outside world. He had to fight for it and there was no way back. But the Southeast group did not need to fight for this. They also did not want to see Li Tianlan rise, but they did not want to lose anything. I agree. Li Tianlan was smiling, but when Chen Fangqing saw his smile, he felt a chill in his heart. If Zhou Yuanshan and Wang Jingxin were the next generation of the giant group, then Qi Mulin could be said to be the next leader of the special warfare group. Qi Mulin was the adopted son of Qi Beizong. Qi Beizong had no reputation after losing his son in the early years. After adopting Qi Mulin, he put all his hopes on him. Under the care of Qi Beizong, Qi Mulin's Qi family developed rapidly, and Qi Mulin stood out early. At the age of 32, he was a deputy governor with real power. This kind of light was extremely dazzling in the whole Zhongzhou state. Gu Xingyun was not confused by anger. He chose a person who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Wang Jingxin and Zhou Yuanshan. I think Comrade Wang Jingxin is more suitable for the work in Xinyuan City. Guo Wenian said slowly, of course, Comrade Qi Mulin is also very excellent, but he has a heavy burden in the Ministry of Security. The Ministry of Security is sensitive, so I don't recommend transferring him. The burden in Lin and is also heavy. Relatively speaking, Qi Mulin is relatively easy. Wan Qingyun said tit for tat. The government of Lin and has developed well in recent years, and the system is still very mature. If Wang Jingxin goes to Xinyuan City, the impact will not be too big. On the contrary, many things in the Ministry of Security are very sensitive. If we transfer him in a hurry, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. I think it's better for Wang Jingxin. Hua Jingyang, the Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State for the first time, said with a smile. As the leader of the academics, second only to Li Huaqing, Hua Jingyang showed the attitude of the academics as soon as he spoke. Li Tianlan took a meaningful look at Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing's smile was very gentle. Let's vote. Chen Fangqing chuckled and said, everyone's will is worthy of respect. President, I suggest holding a plenary meeting of the parliament immediately to vote on this matter. He looked at Li Tianlan and said with a smile, Marshal Li is busy, and there is a very important thing in Tianan now. This matter can't be delayed. Since we have decided to establish Xinyuan City, we should cut the Gordian knot and choose the mayor as soon as possible, so that we can discuss the next plan. Dongqing Wudi's expression froze for a moment. The expressions of Ji Wenxiang and Wan Qingyun also changed. Holding a plenary meeting of the parliament. They really didn't expect Chen Fangqing to do this. Now it was the council meeting of the Zhongzhou State Parliament, which could be said to be the most authoritative and highest-level meeting in Zhongzhou State. The plenary meeting of the parliament was to summon more than 20 councillors to vote together, which suddenly expanded the scope several times. But it was really hard to refuse this matter. Under normal circumstances, the vote of a senior official at the level of deputy governor did not need to be discussed at the plenary meeting of the parliament. However, Chen Fangqing's proposal to hold a plenary meeting to vote on such a sensitive matter as the first mayor at the level of deputy governor in Tianan and the first mayor of Xinyuan City was very appropriate. But the point was, Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenxiang didn't dare to gamble. They really didn't dare to gamble. The sixth group of Zhongzhou State. Now, although Gu Xingyun of the Special Warfare Group proposed a candidate, although his rank was at the level of a councillor, he was not a real councillor, so he didn't have the right to vote. And the North Group was weak. Today's meeting was so lively that they were really watching the fun. Zhou Yunhai, the dignified Minister of Politics and Law of Zhongzhou State, as a councillor, didn't express his opinion on this matter from beginning to end. In the voting, the North Group was bound to abstain. In this way, it was a contest between the Southeast Group and the Giant Group against the Academics and the Prince Group. The Four Group was also the four strongest groups in Zhongzhou State today. Looking at the strength on paper, such a comparison of strength was actually equal, and even the number of councillors and councillors was infinitely equal. Under normal circumstances, if the result of the voting was infinitely close, as the president, Li Huaqing was unlikely to exercise the highest decision-making power. Because in any case, Li Tianlan and the Giant Group were allies of the academics. It was not the time to fall out with them, and there was even no possibility of falling out in the future. The reason why Chen Fangqing and Li Huaqing supported the voting showed that they believed that their side would still win with a relatively large advantage when there was little or no difference in strength between the two sides. The reason? It was very simple. Because this matter was about the appointment of Wang Jingxin. And inside the Southeast Group, there was Wang Qinglin. The cracks inside the Wang family of Beihai were now more and more obvious. At the most critical moment, summer solstice sent Wang Xiaoyao to Eastern Europe. More and more people were aware of the abnormality inside the Wang family of Beihai. And Wang Qinglei had made frequent moves inside the group recently, and his prestige had soared. Many people had begun to move. If there was really a vote, as the future leader Wang Tianzong was most optimistic about, Wang Jingxin could not get Wang Qinglei's support. After all, Wang Jingxin's advance and retreat could even directly affect Wang Qinglei's position. Although there was a big age gap between the two, it was not big enough for 2 presidential terms. If the Southeast group wanted to push Wang Jingxin to the highest altar in Zhongzhou state 20 years later, then the first decade was also the most glorious time for Wang Qinglei. He had to make compromises and sacrifices. His career might not stop there, but he certainly would not be able to reach the position of president. Now the 6 group were competing with each other, and it was unlikely that 2 consecutive presidents would come from the same group. Similarly, if Wang Qinglei sat in the position he dreamed of 10 years later, then Wang Jingxin was unlikely to reach the top. Within the Southeast group, Wang Qinglei and Wang Jingxin had become the most direct competitors, not to mention the obvious cracks within the group. The power that belonged to Wang Qinglei would definitely support the Prince Group and the academics to transfer Wang Qinglei to Tiannan. At least for now, Wang Qinglei was extremely confident. He did not oppose Zhongzhou state weakening the Wang family of Beihai because he was confident. He was confident that after he reached the top, he could take the Wang family of Beihai to a new peak in 10 years or even longer. The Wang family of Beihai was dominated by him and Wang Xiaoyao. I agree to hold a plenary meeting of the council. Li Huaqing said calmly, in this case, let's adjourn for the time being and invite all members of parliament to Zhongzhou state. With today's means of communication, all members of parliament could participate in this meeting through online video. However, it could be said that this voting meeting was related to the future pattern of Zhongzhou state. Every director had to confirm the attitude of the councillors face-to-face. To put it bluntly, the face-to-face voting was the easiest to control and the most powerful vote. Li Tianlan, who had been silent, slowly turned around and walked out of the conference room. Other directors also stood up and moved their bodies. It was dusk outside the window. The meeting that started in the early morning had lasted for a whole day. Li Tianlan looked at the dusk outside the window that was about to fade, lost in thought. Tianlan. Dongqing Wudi walked over slowly and handed Li Tianlan a cigarette. Li Tianlan took out a lighter and lit it for him. Then he lit his own cigarette and took a deep breath. He may not be able to withstand it. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. It's okay. Li Tianlan shook his head with a smile. The situation may not be as bad as we think. Dongqing Wudi said with some doubts. Because it's too early. Li Tianlan said softly, I don't think Wang Qinglei is ready to break up with Wang Tianzong, even if this is a good opportunity. Dongqing Wudi thought for a moment, nodded, and then shook his head. What if Wang Jingxin really becomes the mayor of Xianyuan City? He asked slowly. He can't go up. Li Tianlan shook his head. Qi Mulin can't go up either. You want to? Dongqing Wudi raised his eyebrows. There are still many people who don't know me or Tiannan very well. Li Tianlan said lightly, I don't mind putting on a show with them, but when the show is over, they must also realize that I have the final say in Tiannan. Xianyuan City can have a mayor, but this mayor must be surnamed Ning. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a long time and said softly, You are trying to establish power. Li Tianlan smiled and did not answer. Chapter 716. At 9 o'clock in the evening, the meeting, which had been adjourned for nearly 4 hours, resumed after eating the meal sent by the staff. The original council meeting became a meeting attended by all the councillors. All the councillors, including several governors of special provinces, rushed to Yuzhou as soon as they received the notice. One of them even gave up the councillors' meeting that was held in his own province. In addition, there were 2 special people who were also invited to participate in this meeting. The candidates for the first mayor of Tiannan. Wang Jingxin. Qi Mulin. Ning Ziyuan snorted unabashedly when he saw the 2 candidates. He almost couldn't hold back his anger. In Zhongzhou State's mind, These two were the best candidates for the first mayor of Tianan. But when Li Tianlan proposed the establishment of Xianyuan City, he recommended Ning Qianqing. In any case, Ning Qianqing should be one of the candidates, and he was nominated by Li Tianlan himself. Even if Zhongzhou State didn't agree, it should call him in. This was the minimum respect and basic procedure. However, both Chen Fangqing and Li Huaqing were determined not to give face to Li Tianlan. Ning Qianqing's issue was not mentioned at all. As the voting was about to take place, one of them, Qi Mulin or Wang Jingxin, would become the first mayor of Xianyuan City. In the solemn conference room, the councillors took their seats one by one. Li Tianlan sat in the last seat. When Zhongzhou State didn't approve his resignation, he was still the marshal of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State and a councillor. But because of his age, his position was very low. This time, Gu Xingyun didn't sit next to Li Tianlan. Next to Li Tianlan was Wu Jingmin, the vice prime minister of Zhongzhou State, who had entered the cabinet but had not been added as a councillor. There was no doubt that compared with the academics and even the giant group, Wu Jingmin and Li Tianlan had a closer relationship. Li Tianlan's own group was still an illusion, but if this illusory group was really put forward now, Wu Jingmin would be the well-deserved leader of the Li family's group. But it was a little embarrassing that only Wu Jingmin could really play a role in the overall situation. A one-man group inevitably sounded a little shabby. Sitting next to Li Tianlan, Wu Jingmin glanced at Li Tianlan calmly and hesitated. Li Tianlan looked calm and shook his head with a smile. In this meeting, he and Wu Jingmin had the right to speak as members of parliament, but they did not have the right to vote. Although Wu Jingmin would officially enter the parliament of Zhongzhou State in a few months, he did not have the power to make decisions at the moment. This was a rule that could not be broken. So they were sitting here today just to watch the fun, even though Li Tianlan was the most important person involved. Dongqing Wudi inevitably had to be more serious. When the meeting was adjourned, he also exchanged in-depth opinions with Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenzheng. Although both sides knew that the cooperation between them was likely to be limited to this meeting and would immediately go their separate ways after the meeting, or even become mortal enemies, it was necessary to strengthen the temporary alliance between the two sides at this critical moment. Dongqing Wudi knew Li Tianlan's plan very well. The first mayor of Xianyuan City, Li Tianlan's first nomination in Zhongzhou State, must be Ning Qianqing, no one else. This was related to the future of Tianan and the Li family group, as well as Li Tianlan's personal prestige. Li Tianlan would not retreat. Therefore, whether Wang Jingxin or Qi Mulin was elected today, Li Tianlan must take action in the most straightforward and forceful way. Li Tianlan had been mentally prepared to completely fall out with Kunlun City or the Wang family of Beihai. He was fearless, and in the case of no retreat, he could be said to be really unscrupulous. But Dongqing Wudi was different. He could not give up on Li Tianlan, which meant that if Qi Mulin was elected, they would become mortal enemies with Qi Beitsong and the entire special warfare group. If Wang Jingxin was elected, they would fight to the death with the Wang family of Beihai. Compared with the Wang family of Beihai and the Southeast group, it was undoubtedly Dongqing Wudi who offended a newly risen special warfare group with a poor foundation. This was the situation that Dongqing Wudi wanted to see most. Although it meant that after Qi Mulin was elected, Dongqing Wudi would bear more pressure in the army headquarters in the future. Dongqing Wudi looked at Li Tianlan with a gentle look in his eyes. Qi Beitsong was the former standing minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State. He had been in the army headquarters for many years. Even though he retired, his influence was still deep-rooted. If they offended Qi Beitsong at this time, the situation of the army headquarters would be more complicated. But compared with offending the Wang family of Beihai, this was the best result. Moreover, Li Tianlan was too young after all. Dongqing Wudi was willing to help Li Tianlan bear more pressure. For public or private reasons, he should do so. His eyes swept across the audience, paused slightly on the members of the giant group, and then fell on Zhou Mulin. Everyone's expression was calm and determined. Dongqing Wudi took a deep breath and waited for the meeting to continue. The meeting lasted for the 13th hour. At 9:15 p.m., The news that Li Tianlan was about to establish Xinyuan City had already spread throughout Zhongzhou State and even throughout the Dark World because of the Midway adjournment. While the whole world was paying attention to the situation in Tianan, the whole world was also paying attention to the result of this meeting in Zhongzhou State. Facing Li Tianlan's gradually sharpening eyes, Li Huaqing's loud and steady voice spread throughout the audience. It was simple, direct, and without any detour. Everyone, you should be very clear about the reason for holding this plenary meeting urgently. Marshal Li Tianlan has officially defeated the Burning Legion and recaptured Tunan City. Zhongzhou State has decided to establish Xinyuan City with Tunan City as the foundation in Tianan. If there is no accident, Xinyuan City will be the capital of the whole Tianan province in the future. His eyes looked around the audience, and there was a very obvious pressure in his gentleness. The reason for holding this meeting is to discuss the personnel issues in Xinyuan City. At present, we have two candidates, Speaker Wang Jingxin of Lin, and Qi Mulin, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Security. As for these two comrades, I personally prefer Comrade Wang Jingxin. If you have any ideas, please say them. Everyone narrowed their eyes at the same time. Li Huaqing's attitude was extremely firm. This was obviously Chen Fangqing's proposal, but as soon as he came up, Li Huaqing first expressed his preference. He was the president of Zhongzhou State, and his attitude could undoubtedly put great pressure on others. Moreover, his attitude fully showed that in this meeting on this personnel issue, the Prince Group and the academics had joined hands. I think Comrade Qi Mulin is more suitable. Comrade Qi Mulin's performance in the Ministry of Security is obvious to all. The nature of his work is also more suitable for the sensitive and complicated situation in Tianan. Yi Dongxing, the Deputy Minister of the Army Headquarters, the Chief of Staff, known as the God of Army, was the first to express his opinion without any hesitation. As one of the leaders of the Southeast Group, he could not care less about Li Huaqing on this matter. Li Tianlan could be unscrupulous because he had nothing now. After all, Emperor Dong's palace had just taken shape. But the Wang family of Beihai could not. At this stage, the Wang family of Beihai did not want to have any conflict with Li Tianlan for the time being. Yes, Comrade Qi Mulin is more suitable. As for Comrade Wang Jingxin, he is doing well in Lin. Recently, the plan of Lin and World Expo application has been sent to the cabinet, and the procedure has been started. I think it's more suitable to replace him at this time, Tong Xiaoshan, the Vice Minister of the Cabinet, said calmly. As the only power of the Southeast Group in the cabinet, he must show his attitude. I've learned about Lin and's application for the World Expo. There is no problem in the procedure. It's just a formality, and the impact is not great. Comrade Wang Jingxin is a steady person. I think it's more suitable for him to go to Tianan. A loud voice sounded after Tong Xiaoshan. It was He Nanfang, the speaker of Nanyue in Zhongzhou State, one of the leaders of the Prince Group. I support Comrade Qi Mulin. The speaker of Beihai Province's voice was flat. There was no reason, but his attitude was extremely clear. Comrade Qi Mulin is indeed more suitable. Bai Zhanfang, the speaker of Yuzhou, said lightly. You can't say that. With Comrade Wang Jingxin's ability, I think he is very suitable to serve as the mayor of Xinyuan City. The mayor of Xinyuan City. As for experience, Comrade Wang Jingxin is still young and can be trained. Besides, His Highness Li Tianlan is looking after Tianan. Even if Comrade Wang Jingxin makes a mistake, there will be no problem. Zhong Yongming, the speaker of Huading, said with a smile. He was a loyal member of the Prince Group and had a deep hatred for Li Tianlan. Back in Huading, his son Zhong Yue died in Li Tianlan's hands. Zhong Yongming had never shown too much hostility, but the hatred of his son's death was really irreconcilable. Zhong Yongming didn't move because he didn't find a chance. As long as there was a chance, he didn't mind making trouble for Li Tianlan. The bigger the trouble, the happier he would be. I agree with Speaker Zhong. In the hearty laughter, another member of the Prince Group stood up. The meeting was becoming more and more lively. The North Group still remained silent. People from the Prince Group, the academics, the Giant Group, and the Southeast Group kept speaking, and their words became more and more intense. Li Tianlan, the center of everyone's attention, did not speak. In the other center, Wang Qinglei also did not speak. Chen Fangqing glanced at Wang Qinglei, narrowed his eyes, and suddenly said with a smile, "Since everyone's opinions are not unanimous, then I suggest a vote." He didn't want to talk about voting anonymously. What he wanted was to see everyone's attitude clearly, especially Wang Qinglei's. He glanced at Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing nodded and said calmly, "Those who agree with Wang Jingxin's transfer to Tiannan, please raise your hand." When he said this, he was the first to raise his hand. Prime Minister Chen Fangqing of Zhongzhou State, Second Prime Minister Hua Jingyang, and Speaker Guo Wenyan raised their hands one after another. The members of the two groups also raised their hands. Chen Fangqing stared at Wang Qinglei, his eyes extremely sharp. Wang Qinglei's palm moved slightly, but in the end he did not raise it. He was really not ready to let the Southeast group split now. Chen Fangqing's eyes focused for a moment, then he smiled and did not speak. Wang Qinglei's attitude was very important, but it was not crucial. With such a good opportunity, even if Wang Qinglei did not raise his hand, he would certainly not support Qi Mulan's transfer to Tiannan. The biggest concession he made was nothing more than not supporting Wang Jingxin. In this case, they still had an advantage in votes. This was a very crucial vote. Even if they abstained, it could still play a role. The most important thing was that the president was on their side. When there was no advantage or the advantage was weak, the president could make the decision. Without Wang Qinglei, the Southeast group and the Giant group could not surpass them in votes. Li Huaqing smiled and said lightly, "Those who agree with Qi Mulan's transfer to Tiannan, please raise your hand." Dongqing Wudi was the first to raise his hand. He was very determined. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenzhang raised their hands at the same time. The members raised their hands one by one. Who was that? Everyone's pupils constricted. In the corner of the conference room, Xia Qiuling, a member of Zhongzhou State and the joint minister of Zhongzhou State, was also raising her hand. Her expression was very calm. Li Huaqing's expression froze for a moment. Xia Qiuling. This was not a member of the Giant group, nor of the Southeast group, but the North group. Chen Fangqing suddenly looked back and stared at Zhou Yunhai, the director of Zhongzhou State, the supreme leader of the North group. In everyone's sight, Zhou Yunhai's palm was raised little by little. In silence, he finally raised his arm. The North group. How was it possible? Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes. There was an uproar in the conference room. Chen Fangqing's face suddenly became extremely gloomy. Was Wang Qinglei's vote crucial? Maybe it was. Chapter 717. Zhou Yunhai's hand was raised quietly. It was calm, stable, and indifferent. It was a hand full of power. Everyone was looking at this hand, and their minds were blank. Zhou Yunhai had been low-key for too long. For a long time, even some extremely powerful counselors like Yi Dongsheng had more right to speak than Zhou Yunhai, a counselor. But after knowing this and seeing him raise his hand, people realized that this was one of the most powerful hands in the entire Zhongzhou state. Not only because the owner of this hand controlled the political and legal organs of the entire Zhongzhou state, but also because the owner of this hand controlled the lifeline of the entire North group. The North group was the weakest among the six. They hadn't even had a president for decades, but they were also the most cohesive within the six. Zhou Yunhai's raising of his hand did not represent himself, not even the key vote at the moment. It represented the attitude of the whole group. Specifically speaking now, 1 counselor, 2 counselors. 3 votes. 3 votes were enough to break the fragile balance of the 4 groups. And it was complete destruction. Zhou Yunhai. How could it be possible? Why was it Zhou Yunhai? Chen Fangqing was a little confused and angry. He and Li Huaqing had their own plans, but his biggest purpose was to weaken the Wang family of Beihai. For him, Li Tianlan and Xianyuan City were not even the most important things in this meeting and this vote. Tiannan was indeed the key, but even if he really believed Li Tianlan's promise, it was the key that could be controlled after 5 years. And the Wang family of Beihai. 5 years? Chen Fangqing couldn't afford to waste this time. With Wang Tianzong missing, the Wang family of Beihai lost its spiritual leader, the 7 sword-holding families were swept away, and the internal cracks in Mount Dibing were getting bigger and bigger. With internal and external troubles, this was the best time to target the Wang family of Beihai. No one knew how long it would last, but once Wang Tianzong reappeared, the good situation would be completely destroyed. What Chen Fangqing wanted most was to seize this opportunity to weaken the Wang family of Beihai, not only for the prince group, but also for Zhongzhou state. No one denied that the Wang family of Beihai had brought unimaginable benefits to Zhongzhou state for hundreds of years. But no one could deny that a Wang family of Beihai that could be completely controlled by Zhongzhou state could bring greater benefits to Zhongzhou state. Transferring Wang Jingxin to Tianan was definitely a wonderful move that could throw the Wang family of Beihai into chaos. No matter how powerful the Southeast group was, its resources were limited. Wang Jingxin had reached this step and was stuck at the threshold of the governor level. It would take unimaginable resources to train a future leader to this level. Countless political achievements, overt and covert propaganda, and so on, could not be measured by money. It was impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to give up on Wang Jingxin. If they really gave up on Wang Jingxin, it would be difficult for the Wang family of Beihai to cultivate a qualified successor in a short time. The candidate they pushed out in a hurry could not stand up to the top young generation like Zhou Yuanshan. As long as the Wang family of Beihai did not give up on Wang Jingxin, they had to confront Li Tianlan in Tian. At that time, Chen Fangqing would naturally give Li Tianlan more support and let the Wang family of Beihai invest more and more energy in Tianan. When the Wang family of Beihai's investment in Tianan reached the upper limit, it was bound to compromise with Zhongzhou state. Chen Fangqing did not expect the Wang family of Beihai to be obedient to Zhongzhou state all at once. But slowly, step by step, he could change the transcendent status of the Wang family of Beihai in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Such a situation was not completely hopeless for the Wang family of Beihai. As long as they solved Wang Qinglei internally and helped Wang Jingxin block Li Tianlan in Tianan, once Tianan returned, Wang Jingxin's reputation would also reach its peak. At that time, it was even equivalent to directly locking in the position of president in 20 years. The Wang family of Beihai could also use Wang Jingxin to relaunch Beihai shipping. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The province became transcendent. This was undoubtedly a very difficult path, but it was not completely hopeless. This was also Chen Fangqing's most brilliant enemy. He would never force his opponents to a dead end. While protecting himself, he could also attack his enemies, and at the same time, he could prevent his enemies from doing something desperate. In the end, as the situation became more and more difficult, they would be silently scattered. Chen Fangqing's plan could be said to be infinitely close to success. But Zhou Yunhai. He directly took the palms of the other 2 members of the Wang family of Beihai with one hand. The number of members and directors who supported Qi Mulan to go to Tianan had exceeded the number of members and directors who supported Wang Jingxin, especially the 9 directors. Now there were 5 who opposed Wang Jingxin. Even Li Huaqing could not force this appointment, otherwise the consequences would be too serious. Now Li Huaqing, who was bent on protecting the interests of the academics, would certainly not do so. And all this was because of Zhou Yunhai. He betrayed the interests of Zhongzhou state. Chen Fangqing took a deep breath, and the anger in his eyes grew stronger. He did not know why Zhou Yunhai supported Qi Mulan. There were too many possibilities. It might be because of the Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, or the special warfare group. No matter which side he favored, it was possible for him to raise his hand now. The key was to see which of the 3 could give him more benefits. Chen Fangqing gritted his teeth. He wanted to speak several times, but he finally said nothing. The atmosphere suddenly became silent. Li Huaqing waited for a few seconds, nodded slowly, and said calmly, "In this case, Comrade Qi Mulan, you hand over the work of the Ministry of Security these days." Qi Mulan nodded calmly, but there was a flash of obvious excitement in his eyes. Yes, excitement. He might not know the reason why he and Wang Jingxin were pushed out, or he might not know, or he might know Gu Xingyun's helplessness, Or he might not know, but it didn't matter. At least for him, it was a good thing. Compared with the leaders of the next generation like Wang Jingxin and Zhou Yuanshan, the identity of the successor of the Special Warfare Group was slightly weaker. Besides, he was only Qi Baizong's adopted son, not his biological son. In this way, the support he could get was slightly worse than that of the first two. If there was no accident, 20 years later, he might try his best to radicalize the council of the Zhongzhou State Parliament, but his ranking would certainly not be too ideal. It was certain that he would be at the bottom. Now, going to Tiannan was undoubtedly an opportunity for him. In a sensitive place like Tiannan, his experience in the Ministry of Security and local work could be perfectly matched. In other words, as long as he could stand firm in Tiannan, the identity of the future leader of the Special Warfare Group would no longer be disputed. If he did well enough, he could even be qualified to compete with Wang Jingxin and others. As for the conflict with Li Tianlan, he didn't dare to look down on Li Tianlan, but no matter what the conflict was, it was the conflict between the Special Warfare Group and Li Tianlan. With the support of Gu Xingyun, he felt that he should be able to cope with it. Qi Mulin subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's eyes swept over calmly, and there was a hint of an ambiguous smile at the corner of his mouth. Qi Mulin lowered his head slightly and stopped talking. Li Huaqing encouraged Qi Mulin a few words and also chatted with Wang Jingxin. Before the end of the meeting, the two senior officials at the level of deputy governor, who should not have appeared in this meeting, had been taken out of the conference room by the secretary. Li Tianlan sat in his seat and yawned in boredom. There was a subtle change in the silent conference room. The Prince Group and the academics. The tacit understanding between the Giant Group and the Southeast Group seemed to have completely disappeared. All the cooperation was completely stopped after the formal vote. Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan with a smile and whispered, "Timon, this comrade Qi Mulin, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. I believe that he will be a good helper for you after he arrives in Tiannan. Zhongzhou State will increase its support for Xianyuan City in the future. If you need anything, you can communicate with me and His Highness Gu Xingyun at any time. Of course, you can also communicate with Minister Dongqing." "I understand." Li Tianlan nodded. Gu Xingyun, who was watching all this coldly, moved the corner of his mouth, revealing a very grim smile. He was very satisfied with the result. Unlike the Wang family of Beihai, the Wang family of Beihai didn't want to fight with Li Tianlan to the end because of the threat brought to them by Zhongzhou State and Li Tianlan's current terrifying strength. But Kunlun City was different. Kunlun City had no way to retreat. No matter how strong Li Tianlan was, as long as he was in Zhongzhou State, Kunlun City must stand in front of him. Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace rose faster and faster. Now Kunlun City's high-end combat powers suffered heavy losses. Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan, two invincible realm experts, were seriously injured. Li Tianlan had proved again and again that his strength was enough to be on the former divine list. Under such circumstances, every time Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace took a step forward, Kunlun City was forced to take a step back. He knew Chen Fangqing. So he knew very well that he couldn't stop the establishment of Xianyuan City. If he wanted to restrain Li Tianlan, he could only tamper with the position of mayor of Xianyuan City. Qi Mulin's election was a little unexpected, but it was the most powerful exception for Kunlun City. As soon as the voting result came out, Gu Xingyun made up his mind to support Qi Mulin's development in Xianyuan City at all costs and suppress Li Tianlan. Gu Xingyun didn't want to wait any longer. He had decided to use Qi Mulin to restrain Emperor Dong's palace first. As long as he recovered from his injury, he would take action immediately. Even if it would set off another case of treason, he would completely eliminate the Li family and Li Tianlan. In a short silence, Li Huaqing raised his hand and looked at his watch. At 11 o'clock in the evening. It was the 15th hour of the meeting. Li Huaqing cheered up, took a sip of tea, and said calmly, "So, let's continue the meeting." When he said this, his eyes had fallen on Ning Ziyuan and became extremely stern. Time passed slowly. From early morning to late night. The lights in the conference room of the Hidden Dragon Sea Conference were always on. Under the close attention of the world, the Burning Legion invaded Tunan City in the 24th hour. The Parliament of Xianxia State finally ended the long meeting late at night. Xianxia State officially decided to support Emperor Dong's palace to establish Xianyuan City. Qi Mulin, the deputy minister of the Ministry of Security, was secretly transferred to Tianan as the first mayor of Xianyuan City and had the power to nominate other leaders. The personnel appointments were formed into documents as soon as the meeting ended and sent to the Ministry of Personnel for filing. The parliament severely criticized Ning Ziyuan, the commander of Tianan Freedom Corps, for his inaction and gave Ning Ziyuan severe punishment. Ning Ziyuan's military rank was demoted from general to lieutenant general. The parliament also gave Ning Ziyuan a serious punishment and ordered him to make a written review in a short period of time. At the same time, the parliament approved Li Tianlan's request to resign as the marshal of Xianxia State and the commander of the Snowdance Corps. Countless details were finalized one by one in the last few hours of the meeting. When Li Tianlan walked out of the conference room, the hidden dragon sea was already silent late at night. Li Tianlan walked out of the door of the conference room and paused. Gu Xingyun walked past him with no expression on his face. Following the direction he was walking in, Li Tianlan turned his head slightly and narrowed his eyes. In his sight, Qi Mulin, the newly elected mayor of Xianyuan City, was waiting to greet Gu Xingyun. He was very respectful. Li Tianlan smiled, which was as bright as the sun. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 7:18. Gu Xingyun didn't hesitate or avoid it. Out of the conference room, he waved at Qi Mulin as soon as he saw him. Li Tianlan's eyes fell on his back, cold and sharp like a blade. Gu Xingyun was expressionless. He quietly watched Qi Mulin coming over and said lightly, "Prepare for tonight. Before going to Tianan, go to Kunlun City first. The situation in Tianan is complicated. You have to bring 2 trustworthy people." His voice was not loud, but it was sure that everyone could hear it. This was to choose bodyguards for Qi Mulin to protect him in Tianan. Kunlun City had a poor foundation. When Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan were seriously injured, it was impossible to find an expert who could guard against Li Tianlan. But it was not difficult to find 2 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. At this time, he declared this in front of all the directors and members of Xianxia State. No matter how arrogant Li Tianlan was, Gu Xingyun did not believe that he would directly attack the experts of Kunlun City and Qi Mulin in Tianan. Li Tianlan did not dare to do it. Ramelin would not attack the people of Kunlun City either. Daybreak's life and death were uncertain. In today's Tianan, 2 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm were enough to ensure Qi Mulin's safety. "Thank you, Your Highness." Qi Mulin bowed slightly and became more respectful. Gu Xingyun nodded. He wanted to let Qi Mulin go back to prepare, but he noticed the eyes behind him. His heart suddenly moved. "Just in case," he said slowly, "let's go together. I have something to tell you." "Why are you so nervous?" Li Tianlan came over with a smile. "Mayor Qi has just accepted the appointment, and the god of war of Xianxia State has become a personal bodyguard. It's a big deal. I'm just guarding against some desperate people." Gu Xingyun took a deep breath and said lightly, "Obviously, this appointment is not in line with someone's wishes, right? Your Highness?" He was talking about someone, not some people. It was self-evident who he was referring to. "If you're talking about me, then you're wrong. On the contrary, I think Mayor Qi's appointment is not in line with my wishes. I'm very satisfied with the result of this meeting." Li Tianlan glanced at Qi Mulin and suddenly said, "Am I right, Mayor Qi?" "Your Highness is right," Qi Mulin said with a fake smile and gloomy eyes. As a senior official at the level of deputy governor, he, who came from the Ministry of State Security, was completely different from most of the senior officials in the system. People who had been exposed to too many dark sides would inevitably be assimilated. At this time, his smiling face and eyes had completely expressed the profound hostility. This was undoubtedly what Gu Xingyun wanted to see most, and Qi Mulin was also very clear about this. With his current identity, he didn't care about offending Li Tianlan at all, but he absolutely couldn't lose Gu Xingyun's support. At this moment, facing Li Tianlan, he must show his attitude. I hope Your Highness and Emperor Dong's palace can cooperate with me in the future. Qi Mulin smiled and reached out his hand to Li Tianlan. On behalf of Tiannan, I thank Your Highness. As long as Emperor Dong's palace does well enough, Zhongzhou State and I will not treat Your Highness badly. His voice was steady and calm, clear and loud. All the people who passed by them turned their heads subconsciously to look at Li Tianlan. Everyone wanted to know what Li Tianlan's reaction would be. Li Tianlan's purpose of building Xianyuan City was very simple. He wanted to find a real long-term headquarters for Emperor Dong's palace in Tiannan. Ning Qianqing was the spokesperson he pushed to the surface and also the future core of Li Group. Now this appointment was not approved, and the spokesperson and the future core were somewhat illusory. But in any case, whoever became the mayor of Xianyuan City would, to some extent, serve Li Tianlan. But Qi Mulin obviously didn't have this consciousness. His appointment had just been approved, and before the organizational documents had been sent to the Ministry of Personnel, he had already put on the airs of the mayor outside the conference room. He actually said that he wanted Li Tianlan to cooperate with him. It was cooperation. And this tone was almost like an order. Everyone admired Qi Mulin's courage. Facing a lunatic who dared to attack Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State, in the meeting of the parliament, he dared to ask him to cooperate with him. This statement was really powerful, and Gu Xingyun must be very satisfied. But what would Li Tianlan do? Li Tianlan did nothing. He glanced at the palms stretched out in front of him, and his eyes narrowed slightly. After a long silence, he nodded and said flatly, "It's a little interesting. It will be more interesting in the future." Qi Mulin calmly withdrew his palm and said with a smile, "Your Highness, see you in Tiannan." He took a step back slightly. Gu Xingyun glanced at Li Tianlan and reached out to shake hands with him. Then he turned around and left with Qi Mulin. Li Tianlan stood where he was, looking at the backs of the two. After a long time, he repeated again, "It's a little interesting. He's deliberately provoking you." A voice suddenly rang in Li Tianlan's ears. Li Tianlan turned his head slightly. Li Huaqing, who was the last to walk out of the conference room, stood beside him. Looking at the backs of Gu Xingyun and Qi Mulin, he frowned slightly. If this is their purpose, then they really succeeded. Li Tianlan said flatly, "I have a bad temper, and now I'm even worse. Walk with me." Li Huaqing was silent for a while and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. At this time, it was already over 3 o'clock in the night. Li Huaqing, who had a day's meeting, was a little tired, but he didn't feel sleepy. Moreover, his cooperation with Chen Fangqing tonight didn't achieve the goal. Now that the meeting was over, he also needed to communicate with Li Tianlan. Qi Mulin is now the mayor of Xianyuan City. You saw the process of the meeting. In fact, in this kind of meeting about sensitive personnel, the process is not important. What matters is the result. The result is obvious. Qi Mulin will go to Xianyuan City. I opposed it, so did the Prime Minister. But since the result is like this is the will of the whole Zhongzhou State. Tianlan, do you understand? I'm talking about the will of the whole Zhongzhou State. Walking on the quiet path of the hidden Dragon Sea, Li Huaqing spoke with sincerity. Li Tianlan was half a step behind Li Huaqing and gave a faint "hm." Li Huaqing opposed such a meeting in the process. But since the result had been formed, the process was no longer important. This was an appointment passed by the Parliament of Zhongzhou State. Naturally, it was the will of the whole Zhongzhou State, including the will of Li Huaqing. Since this appointment appeared, then at least on the surface, whether it was against or in agreement, this appointment must be upheld, defended and supported by Qi Mulin. Politics was not about fighting. Upholding the decision of the organization was the most basic rule. No one could violate it and no one dared to violate it. This rule even exceeded the position. In this system, those who dared to trample on this rule never had a good end. Why not Wang Jingxin? Li Huaqing's brows furrowed as he suddenly asked. This is not my choice, Li Tianlan said calmly. In today's vote, Ning Qianqing had been excluded. So whether it was Wang Jingxin or Qi Mulin, it made no difference to him. Wang Jingxin's character is still very steady. The Prime Minister and I can reach a tacit understanding, but our thinking may not be the same. I do have the intention to use you to restrain the Wang family of Beihai. There is no need to deny this. Tianlan, in my heart, you are the future god of war of Zhongzhou State. It is your responsibility and obligation to share some of the pressure for Zhongzhou State. When Wang Jingxin goes to Tianan, you don't have a conflict. But the Wang family of Beihai doesn't dare to be careless. If there is a conflict, I will naturally give you more support. After all, Wang Jingxin's position in Xianyuan City is just a game. There is a lot of room for advance and retreat. But Qi Mulin? Li Huaqing shook his head. You know very well what his past means. There was no doubt that the grievances between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai ran deep. But even if he swept the Wang family of Beihai and killed many people, for now, it was not impossible for Emperor Dong's palace to coexist with the Wang family of Beihai in the future. This was the room that Li Huaqing said. But Kunlun City was different. Kunlun City now occupied the position that belonged to the Li family. If the Li family wanted to rise, it had to trample on Kunlun City. There was no room for it. Therefore, Gu Xingyun tried his best to fight for the position of mayor of Xianyuan City. If Qi Mulin went to Tianan, there would be no room between him and Emperor Dong's palace. It would only be a life-and-death battle. The most important thing was that such a life-and-death battle would not benefit Zhongzhou State at this stage. It would cause internal friction. No matter how calm Li Huaqing was, he was a little annoyed at this time. In fact, there is a better choice. Li Tianlan suddenly said, Why? Li Huaqing's movement paused for a moment. What? His voice was a little difficult. Why not Ning Qianqing? Li Tianlan asked casually. Li Huaqing did not speak. Sending Wang Jingxin was in the interest of Zhongzhou State, the academics, and the Prince Group. Sending Qi Mulin was not good for Zhongzhou State, but it was also harmless for the academics. But sending Ning Qianqing? This was not what Li Huaqing wanted to see. A new group that started to develop now and had a clear route would not be good for the academics in the long run. Li Tianlan seemed to really just ask casually. Li Huaqing did not answer, nor did he pester him. He just said calmly, sending Wang Jingxin, the Prime Minister means that the position left by Wang Jingxin should be given to Minister Dongqing to arrange. Li Huaqing responded casually, that's the explanation for you. Then there must be an explanation for sending Qi Mulin now. I'll take the position left by him. Li Tianlan said softly. Li Huaqing's eyes flickered and he asked, Who are you going to send? I'll have to wait and see. Li Tianlan shook his head. Now he can't wait to provoke you because he wants you to target him. He has just been appointed by Zhongzhou State, so Zhongzhou State must maintain his authority. The more you act, the better it will be for him. I suggest that you keep a low profile during this period. Even if you want to take action, don't do it in the open. At this time, those old people in the Li family can play a big role. There's no need to worry about Tian. Li Tianlan said quietly, I'm not interested in understanding Qi Mulin's means, just like I don't want to understand Wang Jingxin. Li Huaqing's movements suddenly stopped. He slowly turned around and looked at Li Tianlan. What do you mean? There's no room for negotiation, President. Li Tianlan said slowly, there's no room for Qi Mulin or Wang Jingxin in the position of Xianyuan City. If I'm not satisfied with them going to Tianan, they can't go. He took a deep breath and continued, Today's meeting is very lively, but this is not the result I want. The first mayor of Xianyuan City is Ning Qianqing, and it can only be Ning Qianqing. Li Huaqing's eyes suddenly became alert and dignified. Tianlan, what do you want to do? Chapter 719. As the adopted son of Qi Beizong, the Qi family supported by Qi Mulin could not be regarded as a first-class wealthy family in Zhongzhou State. In terms of momentum, they could not even be regarded as first-class in Yuzhou. Even before Qi Mulin's promotion to a higher level, they could not even be regarded as a wealthy family. However, the Qi family with Qi Mulin as the leader occupied a mansion on Rosewood Street in Yuzhou. Rosewood Street was not a forbidden area in Yuzhou, but it was one of the most mysterious places in Yuzhou. This clean and wide street was filled with the smell of power and wealth. Rosewood Street was less than 3 kilometers long, but the families of a council member and 2 members of parliament were located on Rosewood Street. In addition, the families of Fan Tianyin, the minister of the Ministry of Security, the commander of the Internal Defense Force of Xianxia State, and the minister of the Ministry of Police were also on Rosewood Street. In addition to the families of these core officials, there were nearly 10 super-rich people with assets of more than 100 billion yuan on this street. There were more rich people with slightly less assets. Several old people who once held important leadership positions in Xianxia State also settled down on Rosewood Street after retirement. The mansion occupied by the Qi family was originally the property of Qi Beizong. More than 2 years ago, Qi Beizong retired to the south of Xianxia State for recuperation and gave this mansion to Qi Mulin. The Qi family moved to Rosewood Street and became more and more arrogant. Standing beside the rich and powerful families, they seemed to regard themselves as one of them. When Qi Mulin and Gu Xingyun returned to the Qi family, it was already over 3 o'clock in the night. The mansion was still brightly lit. All the members of the Qi family gathered in the living room, nervously waiting for the news from the parliament of Xianxia State. Qi Mulin was the adopted son of Qi Beizong, but he was not an adopted orphan. His family could even be said to be prosperous. Qi Mulin's father was an old subordinate of Qi Beizong, a real henchman, but he was killed in a border conflict. He was arguably the highest-ranking officer to be sacrificed in Xianxia State in more than a decade. Qi Beizong had always felt guilty about this, so he took good care of the Qi family. However, after taking care of the Qi family for so many years, only Qi Mulin was promising in the whole Qi family. Now, the entire Qi clan had placed all their hopes on Qi Mulin. They had been dreaming of becoming a member of a top-notch clan all day long. Therefore, they were naturally very concerned about Qi Mulin's official career. The convening of this plenary meeting was very sudden. The news that Qi Mulin might go to Southern Heaven City came out of nowhere. However, the news that he had become one of the candidates for the first mayor of Xianyuan City was enough to make the entire Qi clan wild with joy. With Qi Beizong's retirement, Qi Mulin's identity as the future leader of the Special Warfare Group gradually became subtle. In the past 2 years, he had been under great pressure in the Ministry of Security. At this time, if he could become the first mayor of Xianyuan City, he would definitely get the full support of the Special Warfare Group and his position would be stable. By then, it would no longer be a dream for Qi family to become a top influential family. Qi Mulin's 2 younger sisters, brother-in-law, eldest brother, 1 sister, 3 nephews, Qi Mulin's old mother, and some cousins were all gathered in the hall. The moment they saw Qi Mulin and Gu Xingyun coming in, all of them stood up almost at the same time and bowed slightly to Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun smiled and waved his hand. He understood the mentality of the Qi clan very well. It was just like how he dreamed of overthrowing the Li family and replacing it with the Gu family. To some extent, the mood of the Gu family was the same as that of the Qi clan before the treason case was launched. That feeling was unforgettable in this life. "I'll wait for you in the study." Gu Xingyun patted Qi Mulin on the shoulder and said, "Have a good chat with your family. Don't worry." Qi Mulin nodded gratefully and watched Gu Xingyun's figure enter the study. Then he slowly turned around, looked at the family who were staring at him, and said softly, "The Parliament has approved my appointment. 3 days later, I will set off for Southern Heaven." Silence. In the twinkling of an eye, the expressions of every member of the Qi clan in the hall were completely frozen. The indescribable ecstasy gradually distorted everyone's expression. Heavy breathing sounded in the hall. Under the bright lights, cheers and laughter completely broke out in the silence. It was a hubbub. "Brother, is it true? You are the mayor of Xianyuan City now, right?" Qi Mulin's youngest sister rushed to grab Qi Mulin's shoulder and shouted, "Yes." Qi Mulin nodded with a smile and said, "From now on, our Qi clan has enough confidence to stand on Rosewood Street." From the Ministry of State Security to Southern Heaven. Qi Mulin's rank did not change, but his identity changed almost completely, which meant that he had the full support of the giant group. At this moment, he was no longer the future leader of the Special Warfare Group whose position was somewhat unstable, but the future governor of Tiannan Province, Member of Parliament of Tiannan Province, Member of Parliament of Zhongzhou State, and Director of Zhongzhou State. No one dared to underestimate this identity. His Highness still has something to communicate with me. It's very late today. Go to rest. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Qi Mulin nodded and turned directly to the study. Gu Xingyun told him not to rush, but how could he dare to really neglect him? From today on, he and Gu Xingyun would have a closer relationship with Kunlun City. If there was no accident, he would become the most important ally of Gu Hanshan in the future when there was no Gu Xingyun in Kunlun City, just like Gu Xingyun and Qi Beizong a few years ago. The more it was like this, the more he had to show his attitude and let Gu Xingyun and Kunlun City completely believe in his loyalty and his ability. Gu Xingyun sat in the study and smoked silently. When he saw Qi Mulin come in, he slightly raised his eyebrows and smiled. It's very lively outside. But don't you want to celebrate? There will always be opportunities in the future. Qi Mulin smiled. People in my family have a strong desire for power, but they have no ability. They have ambition but no ability. That's what I mean. But no matter what, they are also my family. In the past 2 years, I've been under a lot of pressure, and they haven't had a good time either. They've been suppressed for too long. Now that there's good news, it's inevitable that they'll lose their composure and let your highness laugh at them. I don't have anything to laugh at. Gu Xingyun said calmly, I've also had such a mentality. Everyone in the Gu family has had it, even more serious than now. My father died early. When the case of treason broke out, after it was settled, Zhongzhou State decided to let the Gu family build Kunlun City to guard the order of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. When the news was passed to the Gu family, my second uncle, who was in the invincible realm, cried like a child. He cried and scolded like a madman. He paused and shook his head slightly. Qi Mulin listened attentively. He couldn't know these things that belonged to the Gu family. Now that Gu Xingyun was willing to say these things, he was undoubtedly opening his heart to him. Let's not talk about this. Gu Xingyun threw a cigarette to Qi Mulin and said slowly, I just called your foster father. He will come back. Let's discuss it together. Foster father is going back to Yuzhou? Qi Mulin lit the cigarette. In the dim light, his expression flickered, a little gloomy and a little angry. Of course, this was not aimed at Qi Beizong, who had done so much for him, but at Qi Beizong's return to Yuzhou. He was a little angry, a little helpless, and a little worried. Will it be okay? It's okay. It's not a crime to go back to Yuzhou once in a while. Gu Xingyun said calmly. Qi Mulin snorted coldly and clenched his fists. He was a little unwilling. Qi Beizong was a former council member of Zhongzhou State. Before his retirement, he was the only tycoon standing at the highest level of the Special Warfare Group. However, Qi Beizong was tough. In the position of the standing minister of the army headquarters, he stubbornly resisted the academics, who wanted to gradually master the military's actions. In the past few years, the Special Warfare Group and the Prince Group had gradually drifted apart from each other, and the estrangement between the two sides was deepening. In this way, one could imagine what happened to Qi Beizong after his retirement. The Special Warfare Group exchanged his retirement for huge benefits, but these benefits could only be said to be potential. If there was no accident, when Li Huaqing retired 3 years later, Zhongzhou State would re-elect the new members of the Zhongzhou State Parliament, and in that list, at least 2 or 3 council members would belong to the Special Warfare Group. This was the benefit that the Special Warfare Group got. However, the deal was a deal, and the reality was the reality. Qi Beizong's strength had already made the academics extremely dissatisfied. In cooperation with the giant group, they introduced Dongqing Wudi, who was equally strong. In order to eliminate Qi Beizong's influence in the shortest time, the Zhongzhou State Parliament decided to invite Qi Beizong to the south for recuperation. The so-called invite sounded polite, but in fact, it was the toughest order. After that meeting, Qi Beizong gave his mansion to Qi Mulin and went to the south himself. Until now, he had not returned to Yuzhou even once. If he stayed in Yuzhou, Dongqing Wudi's pressure would only be greater now. Now it's different from before. Although Chen Fangqing hoped that Wang Jingxin would go to Tianan, since the result of the vote was that you should go, he must safeguard the interests of the prince group. If you can stand against Li Tianlan in Tianan, we have the basis for cooperation with the prince group. There is also room for Qi Baizong to return to Yuzhou. Gu Xingyun's voice was calm. Qi Mulin's eyes lit up slightly. He stood there thoughtfully. Gu Xingyun glanced at him and said in a softer voice, "After you go to Tianan, do you have any plans? After all, Tianan is not Zhongzhou state. After this war, Emperor Dong's palace will become stronger and has Li Tianlan, which is not easy to deal with. The most important thing is stability," Qi Mulin said slowly. After all, he was one of the most dazzling high-ranking officials of the young generation in Zhongzhou state. His background was slightly poor, but no one could doubt his ability. The sooner I can stabilize the situation in Xinyuan City, the better it will be for me. Gu Xingyun's eyes suddenly froze. He lowered his head to hide his eyes. Stability. Now in Tianan, with the strong rise of Emperor Dong's palace, all the superpowers should enter a wait-and-see stage. In addition to Li Tianlan, the biggest unstable factor in Tianan was the Burning Legion. As long as the Burning Legion could be restrained, it would not be easy for Li Tianlan to take action even if he wanted to. In a stable Xinyuan city, the authority of the mayor was undoubtedly the greatest. Just like the Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State and Dongqing Wudi. In times of peace, the power of the Prime Minister was naturally greater than that of Dongqing Wudi, the standing minister of the army headquarters. During the period of peaceful development of Zhongzhou State, the minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State was not even a director of Zhongzhou State, but a member of Zhongzhou State. But in recent decades, the international environment changed dramatically, so Zhongzhou State gave the army headquarters more important power. The standing minister of the army headquarters became a director of Zhongzhou State, and his rank was further advanced. The treason case more than 20 years ago made Zhongzhou State feel the threat from the outside world. From that time on, not only was the standing minister of the army headquarters destined to become a director, but the two deputy ministers were also bound to enter the parliament of Zhongzhou State, such as Yi Dongxing of the Wang family of Beihai and Wei Tianhang of the Prince Group. In the context of today's great era, Dongqing Wudi's rank was a director, and his power was slightly lower than that of Chen Fangqing. But if a war broke out, Dongqing Wudi's power was far greater than that of the prime minister. The government needed stability, and the soldiers were always preparing for war. It was the same everywhere. A stable Tianan and a stable Xinyuan city could make Qi Mulin's position more stable. As long as Li Tianlan did not want to commit treason, the powerful force of Emperor Dong's palace would not have any effect on Qi Mulin at all. Gu Xingyun understood this very well, but he did not know whether Qi Mulin's talk about stability at this time was an inadvertent plan or he had guessed the possible relationship between him and the Burning Legion through some clues. Kunlun City will try its best to fight for a relatively stable situation for you. Gu Xingyun was silent for a while and said lightly. Qi Mulin nodded. The stability of Xinyuan City is my only request. As long as Zhongzhou State can put pressure on Li Tianlan, as long as the situation in Tianan remains unchanged, Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace are not to be feared. I'm sure that I can suppress their development. Emperor Dong's palace, let them stay in Xinyuan City forever. Of course, I believe in your ability. Gu Xingyun smiled lightly. Qi Mulin nodded, sorted out his thoughts, and began to tell him his plan. As the successor of a large group that emerged in countless conspiracies and competitions, he thought he was more familiar with the rules of Zhongzhou State than Li Tianlan. As long as Tianan was stable, he had too many ways to suppress Li Tianlan. No matter how brave a person was, he was just a boor after all. Within the rules, even Wang Tianzong, who was known as the Invincible Sword Emperor, was restrained, not to mention Li Tianlan. In the game within the rules, he did not think that Li Tianlan, who had only been in the secular world for a few years, was his opponent. Perhaps no one would think that Li Tianlan could beat him in this respect. The study was plotting. The living room was celebrating. With the selection of the mayor of Xinyuan City settled, the people of the Qi family, who had been waiting for a long time, completely relaxed. Qi Mulin's mother was old, so she went back to rest first. As soon as the old madam of the Qi family, whose status depended on her son, left, others immediately relaxed. Qi Mulin's 7-year-old son was nestled in the arms of his aunt, Qi Muyu. His childish face was blank. After listening to the adults in the family talk for a long time, he roughly understood what had happened. Smelling the fragrance of wine coming from his aunt's body, he wrinkled his nose and said softly, "Aunt, are we going to move? What is Tianan?" "Tianan is our place, a place that belongs to our family. Dongdong, from now on, you are the little prince of Tianan. Are you happy?" Qi Muyu giggled, holding a wine glass in one hand and pinching the little boy's face with the other. "I heard that Li Tianlan is also in Tianan. I'm afraid there will be some trouble." Qi Mulin shook her head. She was the eldest daughter of the Qi family, currently working in the Ministry of Supervision of Yuzhou. She was relatively steadier. "What are you afraid of?" Qi Muyu shook her head disdainfully. "He is just a young man in his 20s. It said that he is very strong, invincible, the future heavenly son, and so on. But no matter how strong he is, can he be stronger than His Highness Gu Xingyun? Kunlun City will definitely fully support my second elder brother when he goes to Tianan this time. What about Li Tianlun? Moreover, my second elder brother is the mayor of Xianyuan City, and Li Tianlan is my second elder brother's subordinate. No matter how dissatisfied he is, will he dare to fight against my second elder brother? Don't forget that his father committed treason. Now the old man is dead. If Li Tianlan dares to make trouble, who will let him go? Muyu is right. He is just a young man. How big can he be? Now Li Honghe, the old man, is dead. Without him, the Li family is completely finished. Mu Lin is the mayor of Xianyuan City. What's there to worry about dealing with a young man? Mu Lin has the support of His Highness Gu Xingyun. I guess he will be able to kill Li Tianlan in a few months. Well, I heard that Emperor Dong's palace is very strong. There are elites from the 2 academies, and they are all geniuses. We can consider giving them a chance to join the Qi family. We want to keep up with the top rich and powerful families. It's good to let these people guard our house. Also, we should give them some armaments." A middle-aged man in his 40s said thoughtfully. He was Qi Mulin's elder brother, Qi Muheng. Compared with Qi Mulin's 2 younger sisters and 1 older sister, the eldest son of the Qi family was a good-for-nothing scoundrel. He didn't care about the situation outside at all. Therefore, he took it for granted that Emperor Dong's palace was already in the Qi family's pocket. Those graduates from the 2 academies who wanted to join Emperor Dong's palace after graduation, in his opinion, even the Qi family had to give them a chance. Hearing this, even Qi Mulin's 2 younger sisters could not help but twitch their lips. "Dad, I heard that there are very beautiful women around Li Tianlan." A tall and burly young man with a silly expression said with a silly smile. "Hey, Xianxia is in a hurry to get married?" Qi Muyu smiled and said, "He's obsessed with wives. I like beautiful women. I want to sleep with them." Xianxia said with a silly smile. His voice was very loud. Qi Muheng smiled and patted his son's head. "Silly son, she is the most beautiful woman in Zhongzhou State. If you really get her, you should give her to His Highness Gu Xingyun and His Highness Gu Qianchuan. I will find you a beautiful girl someday. I also want to sleep with the most beautiful woman with my brother." Qi Dong, who was 7 years old, cried out innocently with a face full of innocence. Everyone was amused and laughed unscrupulously. "You can't tell others about this. Otherwise, His Highness Li Tianlan may go crazy." A young girl who looked only in her early 20s smiled sweetly, looking pure and innocent. "But we can tell him when he is dying. At that time, it will be useless to be angry." Qi Muyu giggled and was about to say something. Bang bang bang. A steady and rhythmic knock on the door suddenly sounded. The whole hall suddenly became silent for a moment. The knock on the door continued. Bang bang bang. Once, and again. The steady knock on the door had a consistent rhythm, but it never stopped. It seemed that it would continue until the end of time. "Is there no door?" Qi Muyu frowned. The mansion that Qi Beizong gave them was not big, but it was very exquisite. There was a small yard outside the gate of the villa, but the knock on the door actually passed through the gate, stepped over the yard, and came to the door of their villa hall. Bang bang bang. The knocks on the door did not stop, one after another. The few guards of the Qi clan did not seem to notice anything unusual, nor did they stop them. Only the continuous knocks on the door were transmitted to the hall in the middle of the night, indifferent and continuous. Qi Muyu suddenly panicked. He picked up the communication device in the room and asked, "Who is it?" Bang bang bang. No one spoke, only the continuous knocking on the door. Qi Muyu looked at the screen of the communication device. The screen was lit up, but only a hand appeared on the screen, gently and repeatedly knocking on the door. Qi Muyu hesitated for a while. He looked at the people in the hall who were exchanging glances. "What are you afraid of?" Qi Muheng shrugged his shoulders and said, "His Highness Gu Xingyun is here." Qi Muyu was stunned for a while, but he immediately felt confident. A faint ray of light appeared by the window. The hazy light shone into the room. It was very clear. A faint golden light flowed. It looked very warm. Aunt, the sky is bright. There is no need to be afraid." The 7-year-old Qi Dong smiled and pointed outside the window. "The sun is out." Qi Muheng did not react in time. He smiled casually and said, "That's right, the sky is bright very early today." Qi Muyu had already stood up and walked to the door. He smiled coldly and said, pretending to be mysterious, "Let's see who you can scare." She walked to the door. The knocking suddenly stopped. Qi Muyu raised her eyebrows. She had not recovered yet. In her vision, the shape of the door seemed to change for an instant. It was a very small change, like a sharp shape protruding from one of the alloys. The silver-white door seemed to have grown a piece of black without a sound. This moment was too fast. However, it was very clear in Qi Muyu's eyes. It was a piece of black blade. Qi Muyu's expression changed drastically. Her mouth opened wide. She wanted to scream, but she did not have a chance. The black blade silently pierced through the alloy door, directly into her mouth. The sharp edge instantly split open her entire face, and the bleeding blade came out from the back of her head. Qi Muyu was not dead yet. The extreme fear and pain caused her eyes to widen. She whimpered as though she wanted to struggle. The blade didn't stop for even a moment. Bang! It sounded like someone was knocking on the door. Qi Muyu's head suddenly exploded, and her body fell straight to the floor. No one could recover from the scene in front of them. Everyone in the Qi family looked at Qi Muyu's fallen body sluggishly, and their minds were completely blank. Boom! In the midst of the loud noise, the thick silver alloy door was smashed by a huge force from the outside in an instant. The pale golden light, like the sun, poured into the living room unscrupulously. The light was so soft, but the dense light filled everyone's sight, making everything in front of everyone very blurry. Vaguely, there seemed to be a very ordinary figure coming in and faintly said, "You are too slow to open the door." Ah! Xianxia, who was a bit silly, was the first to react. His brain was not enough to analyze the current situation, but he remembered the scene when the black blade smashed his aunt's head. He roared and directly rushed to the blurred figure. "You killed my aunt." Shwa! Without any hesitation, the black blade flashed in the pale golden light. Xia's tall figure was suddenly cut into 2 pieces. Blood splashed wantonly, and the living room filled with pale golden light shone with an extremely charming brilliance. Everyone was scared silly. They even felt that they were hallucinating. "Brother!" Qi Dong screamed and rushed over with a sobbing tone, but the golden light was getting more and more dazzling. He could not see his brother's body at all. In a trance, the boy could only angrily look at the direction of the figure wielding the blade. He clenched his fist and shouted, "You are a bad person." "I am indeed a bad person." The faint voice seriously responded to the boy's words. "You are still young, and you don't understand. When a bad person's bottom line is touched, then they will become without a bottom line. I don't need anyone to understand. Something's..." The black blade swam in the pale golden light. "I know it is wrong, but I have to do it." The blade smashed down. The small body flew directly. The heavy blade destroyed the opponent's vitality in an instant, and Qi Dong's body directly smashed into the study room. Ah ah ah! A sharp scream finally sounded. Qi Muling screamed with all his strength, "Don't come over, what do you want, Buzz?" In the violent buzzing sound, the golden light kept flowing. In the increasingly blurred light and shadow, the black blade came over. Warm blood was sprinkled all over the place. Body. The slim figure who was standing here just now was directly smashed by the blade. Blood and internal organs were scattered everywhere in the golden space. "Stop!" A voice full of rage suddenly sounded. The golden light suddenly fluctuated. An extremely majestic sword intent suddenly appeared in the living room. The golden light collided with the sword intent for a moment. Boom! The whole villa suddenly shattered, and the stones flew all over the sky. But they were held up by a huge force and did not fall to the ground. All the people of the Qi family stood in the floating ruins, shivering. The villa was smashed, and all the scenes of the outside world completely appeared in front of them. At this moment, not only the people of the Qi family, even Gu Xingyun sucked in a breath of cold air. There was no scene in front of everyone. There was only light in front of them. It was soft and warm, but it was everywhere. The garden, the streets, and the buildings had completely disappeared. Everything was hidden in the pale golden light. It seemed that the endless light covered the world, extended from the other end of the street, and pulled out a river of light that was more than 2,000 meters long, occupying the entire red sandalwood street. It was vast and mighty. The whole street became extremely blurred and illusory in the light. Only the golden light, like the sun, became the only reality in the world. Gu Xingyun's body collapsed tightly, and his face was pale. Others might not know what it meant, but he could clearly feel the essence of these lights. This was sword light. The light, which was thousands of meters long and almost occupied the whole world, was sword light. The endless light was natural. This was a sword strike. Gu Xingyun didn't even dare to imagine how powerful this sword light, which was thousands of meters long, would be. But he knew very well that he couldn't stop this sword strike. Not to mention that he was seriously injured now. Even if he was in his heyday, he would have to pay a huge price in the face of this sword strike. Li Tianlan. Gu Xingyun opened his mouth slowly. His voice was extremely dry and full of fear. He couldn't figure out why this sword strike was so powerful. This momentum was even close to the peak of the invincible realm. In the golden light, the extremely vague and almost non-existent voice slowly opened its mouth, indifferent and indifferent. "Do you want to die here?" Gu Xingyun's body suddenly shook, and he said angrily, "Do you dare to kill me?" In the golden light, Li Tianlan's voice also rose. "Do you dare to force me?" He didn't dare. Gu Xingyun really didn't dare. The mighty sword strike in the air was still undulating. Gu Xingyun felt the feeling of death more clearly than anyone else. He trembled slightly and took a deep breath. "What do you want?" "Get away from me. It's none of your business." In the indifferent voice, the black blade flowed slightly in the golden light. Swish! In the desperate scream, Qi Muheng's head flew up into the sky. The golden light slowly spread. The scene gradually became clear. Li Tianlan's whole body became more and more illusory. But everyone saw the scene in front of them. Qi Muyu, Qi Muling, Qi Muheng, Qi Dongxia. Blood was everywhere, and broken bodies were everywhere. Dong dong. In the old voice, the old lady of the Qi family suddenly moved. Bang! Li Tianlan waved his hand. One punch. The heavy power shook the whole golden river, and the whole body of the old lady of the Qi family directly broke into a bloody mist. "Stop!" Gu Xingyun was furious. "I'll count to 3. If you don't get away, don't go." Li Tianlan said calmly. "Li Tianlan, you bully me too much." 3. There was no 1 and there was no 2. Li Tianlan directly counted to 3. The golden light all over the sky suddenly condensed, and the majestic sword intent tore most of the street in an instant. Li Tianlan raised his palm. Just at the moment when he was about to aim at Gu Xingyun, whose face changed dramatically, suddenly gritted his teeth. He didn't even have time to say a word. His whole body directly broke through the scope of the golden light and instantly went away. He didn't even have time to take Qi Mulin away. Qi Mulin looked at Li Tianlan with a dead face. He and the whole family were just looking forward to the future of the Qi family. But they didn't expect the future of the Qi family to be like this. Mother, child, elder brother, younger sister, elder sister. The closest people all died in an instant. The rest of the Qi family subconsciously ran to Qi Mulin. Li Tianlan moved forward slowly. Li Tianlan, how dare you? Qi Mulin finally spoke, and his voice became extremely resentful in an instant. Li Tianlan slightly raised his finger. The sword energy entered the flowing light and instantly pierced Qi Mulin's thigh. Qi Mulin suddenly screamed and fell to the ground. Li Tianlan continued to move forward. Qi Mulin struggled to stand up, but under the severe pain, one leg had no strength at all. He kept retreating with his hands on the ground and said hysterically, "Do you know what you are doing? Xianxia state will not let you go, absolutely not." Li Tianlan didn't speak. He didn't think Qi Mulin was qualified to talk to him. The sword light surrounded him again. Puff! In the dull sound, Qi Mulin's ankle was completely smashed by the sword energy. The severe pain made Qi Mulin faint, and he instantly woke up in the torture of the sword energy. He desperately retreated, and all the people of the Qi family also retreated. Li Tianlan was not in a hurry. The Golden River was still surging. Qi Mulin retreated all the way to the street. Li Tianlan moved forward indifferently and occasionally waved his hand. Blood kept flying out. The people of the Qi family fell down one by one. Arms, thighs, heads, internal organs, and blood were scattered everywhere on the street. In the illusion, Li Tianlan watched this scene quietly. His expression was extremely cold. But deep in his eyes, there was almost brutal brutality. At this moment, he had no emotion at all. Not even a little bit of humanity. "I will kill you, I must kill you. I will report to Xianxia state. Li Tianlan, you will die a horrible death." Qi Mulin roared with blood-red eyes and took out his mobile phone with trembling hands. Crack! The sword energy directly smashed the mobile phone and pierced Qi Mulin's hand in an instant. In the blood, Qi Mulin retreated frantically. It didn't matter to him whether he could live or not. What he had to do was to struggle. The longer he delayed, the more likely the experts of Xianxia state would come. He could die. But Li Tianlan had to pay the price. He had to. In the dull sound, the chest of one of Qi Mulin's men exploded completely. Blood gushed out and poured all over Qi Mulin. Bang! Another person of the Qi family fell down. Woof woof woof. A pet dog of the Qi family barked and rushed over. Then it turned into a mass of flesh and blood in the golden light all over the sky. The last person of the Qi family also died in the Golden River. Only Qi Mulin was left. Qi Mulin screamed wildly and kept retreating with his bloody hands and limbs. Li Tianlan followed him unhurriedly. The sword energy kept flying in his hand and fell on Qi Mulin. Every inch of the bones in his legs was completely torn by the sword energy, then his abdomen and sternum. The sharp sword energy shattered Qi Mulin's eyes. Just as he wanted to scream in despair, his tongue was also completely crushed by the sword intent. There was only dull and desperate whimpers left on the long street. The sword energy poured into his ears. Qi Mulin couldn't even hear his own whimpers. He couldn't see anything. He just gritted his teeth and kept retreating instinctively. One by one, his fingers were cut off by the sword energy. Then the palm, the forearm, the elbow, and the whole arm. Qi Mulin cried. Tears flowed from his bloody eyes. His body trembled violently, but he was still retreating. The street was full of blood and pieces of corpses. His body retreated for a distance of thousands of meters on the clean rosewood street. Along the way, he left a crooked but shocking bloodline. Li Tianlan moved forward step by step and quietly watched Qi Mulin's body retreat out of the rosewood street. His body finally stopped moving, but he was gasping for breath. "You will die a horrible death." He cursed with the last of his strength. Fresh blood flowed out from all over his body. Li Tianlan looked at him quietly and didn't speak. Qi Mulin's breathing became lower and lower, and finally, there was no sound. Li Tianlan quietly looked at the body in front of him, which had no complete body, and the depth of his eyes became more and more indifferent. The long golden river was still flowing on the rosewood street. Powerful breaths appeared on the rosewood street one after another. But no one spoke. Li Tianlan stood in the golden light all over the sky, and no one could see his figure clearly. But everyone was silent. Li Tianlan then glanced at Qi Mulin's body and slowly turned around. The golden scene that filled the world disappeared in an instant. Li Tianlan also disappeared. It was still late at night. The dawn hadn't come yet. The red sandalwood street, which had been alarmed by the massacre, was lit up. Countless people carefully walked onto the street. Looking at the blood and dismembered corpses scattered on the street, looking at Qi Mulin, who was extremely miserable, everyone stayed where they were. The rosewood street was dead silent, and no one even dared to speak. The Qi family, which had just been in the limelight in the parliament tonight, was directly exterminated in less than 3 hours after the end of the meeting. Even a dog was not spared. And they were exterminated in such a brutal way. After a long time, a super rich man suddenly squatted down on the street and began to vomit. The experts who came to the rosewood street left as fast as they could and sent the news back. While the sky was still dark, you're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.